League. Let's do some housekeeping first. As you just heard, this meeting is being recorded and will be sent out to everyone who registered through the link. We will have time at the end for Q&A, so please put your questions in the chat as we go through today's action hour. This rumors versus reality action hour is on utility rates. And this session will shed light on the real causes behind rising utility costs in Connecticut and what's driving your electricity bills higher. Our expert panelists include Marissa Gillett, the chairman of Connecticut Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, PURA, Tenaya Taylor, the program manager and founder of Nonprofit Accountability Group, and Dr. Mark Mitchell, the steering committee member of the Connecticut Health Professionals for Climate Action and the co-chair of the Connecticut Equity and Environmental Justice Advisory Council. So without further ado, I'm gonna hand it over to Marissa Gillett, the chairman of PURA, and then we're gonna get started with today. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you, Juliana, and thank you to the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters and my fellow panelists this afternoon for inviting me to participate in this important conversation. Looking forward to answering your questions after the panel presentations as well. So for right now, I wanted to get into a presentation that I have given a version of across the state. If you have not had an opportunity to sit through a PURA 101, I want to make sure that you know we have a recorded version of it. I'm going to do a very abbreviated version today so we can get to the matter at hand. But we've done a couple dozen across the state at this point and feel very passionately that folks should know what PURA is, what we regulate, and most importantly, how to get involved in the proceedings that we oversee. So as soon as I can get my slides pulled up here, go. Okay. So on that topic, what is PURA? If you have not heard of PURA before, although that feels hard to believe after the summer that we had, PURA is not like other executive branch agencies, although we are a member of the executive branch. We are a quasi-judicial agency, which is not the same as a quasi-public. We are a fully public agency. But what quasi-judicial means in this context is that we look and act a lot more like a court than a traditional executive branch agency. And specifically, one of the things that comes along with that is that PURA is led by a board of commissioners rather than by a single commissioner. The best analogy that I've found to date, and one that I hope connects with some of you, is that it's a lot like first selectmen and selectmen in different municipalities. I carry the title of chair or chairman, which makes me akin to a first selectman, and I have fellow commissioners, and together we vote on all matters that come before us. So that's kind of where the court aspect comes into. So what is it that we're voting on exactly? These are matters that come before us in the course of regulating Connecticut's investor-owned utilities. So by investor-owned, I mean utilities that have shareholders. So we're talking in the state of Connecticut, Eversource, UI, their gas affiliates, CNG, SCG, Yankee. And in the water space, we're primarily discussing Aquarion and Connecticut Water. So if you did not hear your utility named there, whether you're in the electric, gas, or water space, it's most likely because you're served by a utility that is either municipally owned or operated by a cooperative. There may be some of you that are served, particularly in the water space, by a municipally held water company. So why does PURA exist? And it kind of connects back to what I was just mentioning about how we regulate investor-owned utilities. And that's because when this whole system was created, decades and decades ago, it was in recognition that the services that we're talking about are what are known as natural monopolies, meaning that it's not cost effective to have multiple utilities serving the same footprint from a distribution perspective. So if you think about other industries that might have natural competition to keep rates and prices in check, The utility world doesn't have that. And because of that, you end up with commissions like PURA. Every single state has their own version of PURA. Sometimes they're called public service commissions, public utility commissions. But really the job of the regulator is to step in and try to simulate the free market and put pressure on the rates and services that the investor-owned utilities are providing. So we do other things. Setting distribution utility rates is definitely our bread and butter. However, those rate cases, as they're called, don't happen every year necessarily. And in some cases, we go a number of years before they occur. So we do other things on a day-to-day basis. Some of them are listed on the screen. And increasingly, we're focused on making sure that consumers are educated about what's on the bill, what's driving rates, and most importantly, how to get involved and advocate if you're looking for something for a different outcome. So I want to get into probably what's driving a lot of interest today and kind of familiarize you with your electric bill. So we're going to focus on electric here, although happy to answer questions here later about gas or water utilities as well. But for this portion of the presentation, I want to focus on your electric bill. So if you're a customer of Eversource or UI, you likely saw a change in the way that your electric bill was designed and presented to you earlier in 2024. When I used to do these presentations, PURA 101s across the state the last couple of years, the number one question that I would get, I'd say, is why is my delivery portion of my bill 3 times that of my supply? And I would often stop and explain, well, actually, the delivery side of your bill is more accurately broken down into 3 components: transmission, distribution, or local delivery, and public benefits programs. And we explained that often enough where we felt like redesigning the electric bill to provide that added level of transparency was an important outcome. And so now lately, one of the questions I've been getting is, what is this new public benefits charge on my bill? And I'll get into this a little bit in the presentation, but I want to be very clear up front that these are not new charges. These charges were baked into your bill previously, where they would have shown up under the more aggregated delivery charge. So now on your bill, you will see 4 categories as opposed to the historical 2. And those 4 categories are the ones I mentioned a moment ago: supply, transmission, delivery, and public benefits. And there are probably an infinite number of ways that you could design and break up the customer's bill. And there's obviously going to be a tension always in terms of the level of granularity versus how much detail just becomes unhelpful. So for now, we've settled on these 4 categories. So the first category, which did exist prior to this redesign, is the supply portion. And just like it sounds, this is recovering the cost of generation, procuring the supply, the actual electrons that are being delivered to your house. In the late 1990s, this component of electric service was deregulated by the state legislature. And I want to be very clear that we are not the only state who went down this path. I'd say probably half of the country has pursued deregulation of the supply side. And this kind of gets back to where I started about how utilities are natural monopolies. And the theory here is, while it would be cost prohibitive to have multiple utilities distributing or delivering electricity, there was room to open up the supply portion of that to competition. And that's what the legislature acted to do. So because those services have been deregulated, while your utility is providing what is called a standard service product, you do have the right to the option to shop for a third-party electric supplier. And if that's of interest to you, PURA does have videos available on our YouTube channel that will kind of walk you through the options of how you might shop for a third-party supplier. So the second component of the bill is transmission. In just a second, I'll turn to the delivery portion of the bill. And I say another frequently asked question that I come across is, why am I paying for transmission and distribution? Aren't those synonyms? And the answer is no. And I'm sure there's a better analogy out there than the one I'm about to provide. But the way I think about this is akin to the federal highway system. If you're thinking about driving cars, if you have to go at high speeds and often cross state lines, go far distances, that highway system is akin to the transmission system in the electric world. So these are the very often tall towers with the heavier looking lines that are often traveling long distances across states with the energy being at high voltages. I do want to pause in the bullets on the screen and say, because these services are crossing state lines, they are regulated by the federal equivalent of PURA, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC. Continuing with my roadway analogy, when you get down to the within the state, so the local delivery. So in this case, once you exit the highway and are on more local roads, that's akin to the local delivery or distribution system in the utility world. And this is really where PURA focuses its primary jurisdiction or ability to regulate Eversource and UI is on the rates that are set in the local delivery place portion of your bill. So these rates are determined, again, through what I referred to earlier as a distribution rate proceeding, and those happen less frequently than the RAM charges that I'm about to talk about in a minute. So for the feature of what everyone has been most affected by over the past couple of months, the fourth and final category of the bill, and again, these are charges that have been on your bill for a number of years, but were previously baked into the aggregated delivery charge. These refer to a group of charges known as the public benefits charge. So there's a lot of line items, a lot of programs that go into this. They are generally speaking costs that support programs generally authorized by the legislature or driven by a state or federal mandate. These contain a lot of different cost drivers. Some of them are listed on the screen. While PURA does review and do sort of an accounting audit on these every year through what's known as our RAM proceeding, the revenue adjustment mechanisms, the rate adjustment mechanism proceedings that happen every year. These are not charges that PURA can generally disallow in the way that we might be able to exercise jurisdiction in the distribution side. Rather, these are charges that the utility has been directed to incur and thus are entitled to recover. So importantly, and I think this note was on most of these slides, as many of you hopefully are now aware, the overwhelming majority of your bill is dependent on your individual energy usage. So these are this is the portion of your bill that lists the number of kilowatt hours that you use each month. And there's really important information on there that allows you to benchmark your usage to how much usage you might have used the previous year, for example. And so what I mean by this is, while a rate is determined for the individual line item, how much you're ultimately going to pay for that depends on your individual household usage. So often when you hear projections from my agency, the utilities, others in this space, We're often giving you projections of a rate impact based on what the average usage is. So it's really critical to understand how much your household is using. And I believe some of my fellow panelists are going to talk about options that you have and should exercise for how you might control your individual usage for your household. So the rate adjustment mechanism proceedings, I've touched on those a bit. They happen every year. Generally speaking, those rates change on May 1st and September 1st. For this year, you saw those rates change on July 1st for both Eversource and UI as opposed to May 1st. And that was because we were expecting and experienced a downward price pressure on the supply component of the bill. So the hope was that some of the increases that we were going to experience on the public benefits side of the bill were going to be offset in part by the decrease on the generation side. So that was that's why we chose to implement on July 1st of this year. So in these RAM proceedings, and these happen every year over a number of months, they involve a lot of discovery. It's, again, PURA as a quasi-judicial agency looks and acts like a court. So we will vet the filings that are made by the utilities. And these are reconciling proceedings where we're looking both backwards to the previous year and evaluating and truing up the revenues that were collected versus what were authorized. And we're also setting the rates for the current year at a level that we hope will prevent massive true-ups in the subsequent year. So what happened on July 1? So what were some of the primary cost drivers? So the percentages that I have on the screen specifically correspond to some of the filings that were in the Eversource territory, although I believe that the percentages are roughly commensurate for our UI folks and the UI service territory. But overwhelmingly, the primary driver of the July 1st increase, and by that I mean over 77%, were costs attributable to the Millstone Power Purchase Agreement. So if you're not familiar with this, Millstone is the state's nuclear plant that had threatened to go offline a couple of years ago. And because of the importance of that asset to the region's clean power supply, a decision was made to enter into a contract with that unit where the ratepayers are essentially providing a guaranteed revenue stream to ensure that that unit remains online. Now, if you're familiar with the financial hedge concept, that's really akin to what the Millstone Power Purchase Agreement is, where ratepayers have essentially guaranteed Millstone a rate of 4.99 cents per kilowatt hour. And if that power can be delivered into the regional market for more or less than that amount, it's a contract for differences, essentially, where the ratepayers are either receiving the benefit or the cost of that financial hedge. And so on July 1st, there was a combination of having to look backward and true up some of the under collections from the previous year, as well as the need to reset the rate for this year to a level that was projected to collect this year's projected revenue requirement. So that obviously resulted in a large upward swing, which the majority of commissioners at PURA decided should be recouped over a 10-month period. The other driver of the increase on July 1st, and one that I hear discussed much more frequently, which I personally feel is unwarranted and unfortunate, is talking points where I've heard discussed that the driver of the July 1st increase was due to our less fortunate neighbors who may have not been able to pay their bills during the COVID moratorium, which was a period of time where the utilities were not able to disconnect for reasons of non-payment. So first, the misconception that I'd like to address is that the COVID moratorium was not debt forgiveness. So our neighbors and those of us and those who were less fortunate than us may have received relief during the pandemic, but now that the moratoriums are lifted, they are facing service termination, and many have entered into payment arrangements to try to address some of those arrearages that have accumulated. And as those arrearages are repaid through payment arrangements or otherwise, those will be reconciled back to ratepayers over the next couple of years through the RAM program. I see I'm running short on time, so I'm going to make sure to hit on a couple of other high points here. But the last point I really want to make sure to hit on the screen is the fact that ratepayers are on the hook for energy arrearages, electric bill arrearages that have accumulated from others is not a new concept. Due to U.S. Supreme Court precedent that has been in place for decades, the utilities are legally entitled to recover revenues for services that were provided. So said another way, it is not coming out of the utility's bottom line if a customer does not pay their bill. Rather, you get to the end of the year, the end of the revenue cycle, and any bills that have gone unpaid are then socialized and recovered from the rest of ratepayers. So I want to make that point because I have heard some criticism of energy arrearage management programs or our new low-income discount rate program, criticism of these programs as misplaced. And I want to be very clear that some of the drivers for these programs are an attempt to remedy this situation that we find ourselves in, where ratepayers are on the hook for unpaid bills due to U.S. Supreme Court precedent. So specifically, I want to address some anecdotes or provide a simplified analogy here. When the low-income discount rate was under consideration, we would receive anecdotes of from low-income advocates who said, if a client with $100 bill and they have $50, but they're going to put that $50 towards medication or food or some other need, because if they put $50 towards that $100 utility bill, the net result's going to be the same, which is they're still going to be terminated. And so, so in that situation, when the $100 bill went unpaid, ratepayers were on the hook for that full $100, as opposed to that $50 that they might have gotten from that individual. So the low income discount rate tries to adjust and correct for that and meet people who are income eligible where they're at. There's a national phenomenon where we're all trying to work towards affordability burden of someone's household paying no more than 6% of their disposable income on energy needs. And the low income discount rate seeks to meet people where they're at around that burden. So those are some of the costs that are also reflected in the RAM rate. So I see I'm out of time. I do have a number of slides, and I'm sure we'll make these available about how to engage with PURA, because it is critical that we hear from a diversity of opinions moving forward. And if there's time in Q&A, I would love to return to the stakeholder group compensation program, which I think is a great opportunity to get people more involved in our dockets. So I'll stop there and turn it over to Juliana. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman Gillett. Those are really great insights. I want to hand it over to Tenaya Taylor. Thank you so much, Tenaya.
Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Tenaya Taylor. My pronouns are they, them. I am the program manager and founder at Nonprofit Accountability Group. We're an organizing and advocacy group based in Hartford. We're founded during the COVID-19 pandemic to address the needs of the community. At that time, our needs weren't being met, so we built free food pantries. We provided laptops for kids to learn while they were doing homework at home. They didn't have any way to do homework, so we had to step in where the system was not. And in the work in these past 4 years, we've helped stop several evictions for low-income people. We helped advocate for the low-income discount rate, and we campaigned for fare-free transit for free buses. Our members are largely Black people and people of color, nonprofit and grassroots organizations, and other people who want to make a difference for clean air and, the world in general. And these folks are affected by the current energy costs. A lot of our community are already burdened by just being poor, being Black and people of color, and the systemic effects that come with that, along with racism in the healthcare system, in the judicial and education system, wealth, income, and pay gaps that are perpetuated by low wages, high rent costs, coupled with stagnant wages. So we see that people are really struggling, and our role as an organization is to advocate with legislation, collaborate with other grassroots organizations, and listen to the community to find solutions and try to advocate for something better. And we're seeing that like our communities are already suffering like more from pollution because of our zip code. So many of our family members since birth, have all these issues like asthma and paying a lot just for electricity rates more than other folks are. I've learned that we're paying a lot more with our bodies and our wallets to keep our homes heated and cooled currently. So, while everyone is experiencing these high energy costs, it's just hitting us twice as hard because of the issues that I named earlier, paying more for healthcare, paying more for transportation, even paying more for food because a lot of us live in food deserts. We don't have grocery stores where we live, and the grocery stores where we do shop at, a lot of the cost of items are double and triple. So when you think about electricity rates, there are people who are paying so much that they can't afford to pay it, and they're experiencing shutoffs. And we contact and work with Eversource sometimes because they want to, how to try to mitigate these problems and tell us that shutoffs aren't happening. There's like an informal moratorium, but time and time again, our members are contacting us, asking us for help with money, fundraising, help with bills because they're being asked over $300 for a reconnection fee. And then we have to contact PURA, Operation Fuel, and other organizations and partners asking for help. And they'll tell us things like if they're low income or have, health issues, they're not supposed to be charged more than $300. So not only are people being shut off, but they're not even being told about other resources and programs on how to fix the issues. If you don't need the whole $500 and you won't be charged $300, why are you scaring people and making them feel like they're not going to have electricity? Not having electricity is a death sentence. We need electricity for the internet to store our food, to find out information, to run medical devices and all of that. So it's really not right that anyone, I think pandemic moratorium or not, should be experiencing these high rates and no electricity. It really shouldn't be for profit if it's something that people need. It's not a commodity, it's a basic need. So every time we contact Eversource, or have a discussion with them. They want to say that shutoffs aren't happening, or people have the help that they need, or you can just sign up for like the health pass. And just the other day, my mother had to house one of our family members and her two daughters, already cramped living spaces, because she was experiencing a shut off and couldn't afford to get her electricity back on. These are only the people that we know, so there are probably hundreds, if not thousands of people, disproportionately Black and brown people, experiencing shutoffs and not being able to cut it back on, because that's the difference there. Some people, might forget to pay their bill. Oh, I'll just get money from my bank account. For a lot of us, there is no money in the bank account. There is a need for fundraising. There is a need for going to CRT, asking for energy assistance, contacting other organizations to help get that power back on. And that is like a huge difference when it comes to, what everyone is experiencing. Some people have the resources to, ride this wave, but some people just don't have anything at all. And Eversource just keeps siphoning from our pockets, along with like the other high cost of living. So, just trying to continue to do this work and address these needs. But I don't believe for a second that it can't be controlled. They have like very good PR, very good community facing people who say, oh, there's not a profit. There's nothing we can do. Money's fake at the end of the day. You don't have to charge people these high rates. There is another side to the utilities. They have a nonprofit, they have a foundation, they have a charity. The only need for a charity and a foundation is if you're profiting and making money. You have a marathon that you're running, so there is some excess somewhere, and the cost shouldn't be shifted onto the people. It should be shifted onto the utilities, because there is extra resources there for people to be able to save on bills. So I really want to thank Marissa for naming the resources and giving a rundown on the issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tenaya, and thank you for that point of view. And really, thank you for everything that you're doing for communities and really giving communities a voice today during this action hour. So thank you so much. I am going to hand it over to Dr. Mark Mitchell now, and it will be our final presentation, and we will go into Q&A after. So if you have any questions, please add them in the chat. Thank you all so much.
So thanks so much, Juliana, and thanks so much again, Tenaya, for all the work that you do for for those who really need and are most affected by the utility rates. I am Dr. Mark Mitchell. I'm with the Connecticut Health Professionals for Climate Action, and I also co-chair the Connecticut Equity and Environmental Justice Advisory Council. The Connecticut Health Professionals for Climate Action, or CHPCA, is an organization of health professionals throughout Connecticut that who are seeing the effects of climate in our patients and want to educate the public about what the health effects that we're seeing in our patients, like Tenaya was talking about, and about what needs to be done to address climate change. So I want to focus on energy efficiency, although I do want to talk a little bit about clean energy first, and the health effects of clean energy. As you heard from Chairman Gillett, the public benefits charge has several components, including primarily the payment for the Millstone Power nuclear plant, and there was a moratorium on electric shutoffs and some payments of that. their energy efficiency programs, and she also mentioned that there's renewable energy programs. So I want to start talking about the health effects of renewable energy programs first. So currently, most of our electricity comes from natural gas or fossil gas, as we sometimes call it, which is mostly methane. And low-income people, but particularly people of color, are much more likely to live near the power plants, near the um, infrastructure, the pipelines, the compressor stations, and though and in Connecticut, there's a direct correlation between power plants and the percentage of people of color, power plant location and the percentage of people of color. Bridgeport, New Haven, uh, Middletown, and less so Hartford are affected, have large power plants, and the air pollution that comes from those power plants, on top of the traffic-related air pollution, which are concentrated in urban areas. So this contributes to asthma as and a number of preterm birth and a number of other health issues. But so as we move to cleaner, renewable fuels that do not produce uh, um, air pollution, we will get an immediate improvement in health, or immediate reduction in asthma attacks and others. And so we will get health benefits. So for example, asthma, uh, between a half and three quarters of asthma, of the cost of asthma hospitalizations and asthma emergency room visits are paid for by the taxpayer. And so as we move to cleaner sources of fuel, then we will see a reduction in those health costs. So I want to move now to the benefits of energy efficiency. Energy efficiency, saves money. It keeps the homes comfortable and safe and healthful. And this is particularly true of low wealth people and oftentimes those who live in urban areas. So low wealth homeowners are more likely to live in older or substandard housing that is more likely to be in disrepair. They may have purchased a low-cost house, not knowing that it has high maintenance cost, that it has that there would be high energy bills and other bills, and so therefore they may not be able to afford the maintenance of those homes. Um, Also, sometimes, people inherit a house or they buy a house, and then their primary income earner can no longer support the house. So, for example, they may become ill with a chronic illness, may get divorced or die. And as these houses are in disrepair, you are more likely to see leaky windows and doors where both water and air from the outside can get through, uh, and also leaky roofs where we can see water. Uh, Older houses may have little or no insulation. So again, contributing to the higher cost uh, of, uh, of energy. So what are the health effects of these high energy costs? So as you heard Tenaya say um, and Chair Gillett say, people will prioritize other bills, such as food and clothing and medicines, or even their mortgage, over paying their utility bills. And so in the wintertime, they will not run the heat. They'll keep the indoor temperatures, very low. And in the summertime, they may not run air conditioner at all. And so that means that if they can't afford their heating bills in the wintertime, that they may send their children to bed in their winter clothes. And oftentimes it'll be very stressful for the homeowner, particularly the mothers. And they may be ashamed of having to do what they have to do uh, in order to get by. In the summertime, many people cannot afford air conditioning, cannot afford the electric bills in the summertime. And heat is the greatest weather-related cause of death. It's greater than hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods combined. And people who are most likely to die in the heat are elderly urban shut-ins. This is because of the heat island effects, where the temperature in urban areas may be 10 to 20 degrees warmer at night than in surrounding suburbs or rural areas. They may keep their windows and doors closed and locked because of concern about security, about crime. And they may be taking other medications, such as high blood pressure medications or other medications for chronic disease that interact with the heat to make them more susceptible to the heat, the effects of heat on the body. And I mentioned previously that there may be leaky roofs or windows, and this oftentimes contributes to mold. And mold indoors can cause asthma attacks in people who already have asthma, or they can exacerbate other pre-existing respiratory or heart or lung conditions. And it can also make other immune-related health conditions worse, such as people with allergies or HIV or cancer. So again, these are health effects. Now, weatherization reduces these health threats. Low-income households are more likely to face increased health and safety barriers to weatherization and to receiving energy audits. They're more likely to live in older housing that have lead in their windows and doors primarily. They may have asbestos. We talked previously about mold, and they all may also have very old electrical wiring with the knob and tube exposed wiring. Any of these issues can disqualify people from getting an energy audit and may disqualify them from certain types of weatherization. So there are some programs that are funded through our public benefits charge to address these issues. There's the Home Energy Solutions is the primary one. And that is where there's an energy audit And during the audit, they also do quick and easy energy efficiency upgrades, such as caulking, sealing cracks and openings, installing low flow water faucets, and other. And then they would also recommend more substantial energy efficiency upgrades. So in addition to the home energy solutions, there's home energy solutions for income eligible people, the people of lower income. And that includes the same things as the home energy solutions, but there's no charge for people who qualify for other low income services. But as I mentioned before, low-income people are more likely to have obstacles, health and safety obstacles to participating in these programs. So the state started a couple of years ago the Residential Energy Preparation Services, or REPS. And what they do is they eliminate the health and safety barriers for the HESIE programs, as well as the renewable energy programs, the weatherization assistance programs, I'm sorry. And so again, that program is also partially paid for through our public benefits charge. So in conclusions, the public benefit charge provides programs that are critical to the health, comfort, and reducing energy bills. And so I recommend that these programs continue and that they be supplemented by funding from taxpayer funds. So thank you, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mitchell. We are going to get into Q&A now. I'm going to open up the questions and start with the first one. The first question is, the equitable modern grid is part of Chairman Gillett's visions, but it does come with some risks. New technologies like EVs and charging infrastructure are expensive. How does Gillett plan to protect consumers financially if these ideas fail?
Thank you for the question. The Equitable Modern Grid, for those who aren't familiar with it, encompasses originally 11 different initiatives and has expanded quite a bit in recent years. It's targeted at the electric grid, and it's focused on figuring out the ways that the electric grid needs to be modernized in order to meet the moment. And one of those tracks, as the questioner inquired about, does deal with the integration of light-duty electric vehicles into the grid. So all of the programs that we have evaluated and considered as part of the Equitable Modern Grid, including others that look at behind-the-meter energy storage programs, include rigorous cost effectiveness testing. It's for those that are familiar with the energy efficiency world that Dr. Mitchell is talking about. You're aware that there are cost effectiveness tests that are used to evaluate different viewpoints of these programs, and those have been applied to the EV program. I would say I'd turn the question a little bit on its head and say that the risk of not pursuing programs like the light duty electric vehicle charging program is that the grid would have to undergo much more costly upgrades in the future in order to accommodate the state's goals. So a lot of the programs that we're focused on deploying are making sure that the grid is optimized and updated in a way that avoids costlier upgrades. There's a lot of questions and conversation during the last legislative session about well, how is the grid going to accommodate an electrified future? And the answer in many cases to those questions is through the programs that the Equitable Modern Grid is standing up. And importantly, these programs are not designed to achieve a grid that can handle 100% electrification tomorrow. They are on 9-year trajectories. So if, for example, the state decided, to abandon battery storage next year. Like right now, we have a gigawatt target for 2030. Then PURA's programs on those 9-year trajectories would wind down to accommodate the changing landscape. There are other aspects of the Equitable Modern Grid, including a regulatory sandbox pilot program that specifically has built into it a fail fast mentality, which is a specific component that works to protect ratepayers. So I thank you for the question, and I'll probably stop there in the interest of time.
Great. Thank you so much. Next question is about decoupling PURA from DEEP. Someone asked, whenever there is a public outcry over a rate increase, there are also calls for PURA to separate from DEEP. Would a decoupling per se be beneficial to ratepayers, or is it unnecessary and a waste of time and cost?
I appreciate the question. I will say that I think this issue gets perhaps more attention than it warrants. I will say that PURA is an independent agency. DEEP is a party and appears before us and advocates for the governors and their position in the light of day and in proceedings before us. And that is the influence that they're exerting. So I, besides some, behind the scenes inside baseball administrative matters that certainly you could always nitpick, there is no overwhelming reason in my mind to go down this path. I think there are better uses of our collective time than to focus on that question.
Great, thank you so much. The next question is in regards to the impact this has on small businesses, specifically Fairfield County. It has been reported by the CBIA chambers and state Republicans that the higher electric rate costs will adversely affect small businesses. Overhead costs. What have you heard? Also, there is talk about a special session for Governor Lamont to address the issue. What do you think should be done?
There is a lot in that question. I will say, and this as a matter of public record, folks can go back and read my dissent from the vote that was taken with respect to the July 1st. One of my primary concerns regarding the recoupment of the costs over 10 months was a concern that was going to really weigh heavily, not just on our small businesses, but our business community overall. I think one of the most prevalent concerns I'm hearing these days is the volatility of the rates that we're facing and just the really overwhelming need for customers to have a measure of predictability and stability in the rates that they are facing. That's definitely a difficult thing to achieve, particularly on the supply side where we're wholly exposed to the wholesale market. But it is a laudable goal for the public benefit side. My dissent for the July and then my second dissent in September, I think gets into some more detail around this. I think that there are things that can be done to improve the predictability or at least decrease the volatility of some of these rates. And those will be the subject of PURA proceedings. So again, earlier I didn't get to fully plug how you participate in PURA proceedings, but I would welcome those conversations because that's where the rubber really meets the road. And PURA's decision-making is really much more robust when we get those different viewpoints, including from small businesses, into our proceedings.
Thank you so much. This question is for Dr. Mark Mitchell. If residents who live near power plants are higher risk for respiratory problems, breathing issues and asthma, and severe life-threatening medical illnesses such as cancer, cardiac problems, can these residents sue or get compensation for medical visits and treatments? If we had cleaner energy, wind turbines, for example, do you see any negative health risks with people or the oceans?
So yes, there are a lot of questions in that one. So the current laws and regulations allow for the amount of pollution that is currently being produced. And there is a couple of years ago, I guess last year, the legislature updated the law, the environmental justice law, and said that we can, for the first time, we will be for the first time able to look at cumulative risk and health effects. And so over the next 2 to 3 years, DEEP will be coming up with regulations. The Department of Energy and Environmental Protection will be coming up with regulations on how how we can consider health effects and consider the right now you can put an unlimited number of small power plants in urban communities, and you can't consider the cumulative effects. But with the new law, we'll be able to, the new regulations will be able to consider the cumulative effects. So the short answer is no, you can't sue because of that. The question about health effects from energy, clean energy, from renewable energy. Yes, there might be some small effects, but not nearly as many effects as we have from our current fossil fuel system.
Thank you so much. We have time for one more question. I think Chairman Gillett, this one's for you. Since Millstone provides power to all New England states, has Governor Lamont considered renegotiation of the CT Millstone power contract to include participation by other states and acknowledgement by Millstone that methane and therefore electricity market rates have to go down? And that is our last question for today.
Excellent question. There was legislation in the 2024 session. I may get this wrong, but I think it was Senate Bill 385 that included a provision that requires a future contract if the state enters into a future contract with Millstone or other resources to include another state partner in those efforts. So I think that there's definitely, assuming I have those details right, I think there's definitely a plan prospectively. I would have to defer on the balance of those questions to the administration or DEEP, because the way the Millstone and really all power purchase agreements work is that PURA has the jurisdiction over reviewing it once it's already been negotiated and entered into. And so PURA is not in the room and those are being discussed. So I'd have to defer to my colleagues over at DEEP, but I am aware of that legislation from last session, and apologies if I have that reference wrong.
Thank you so much. So we are just out of time. So I wanted to thank Chairman Gillett, Tenaya and Dr. Mitchell for your insights during today's action hour. This is being recorded and we are going to send this video out to everyone who registered through the link. I will put the speakers' emails and contact information if you have any follow-up questions after this. But again, thank you all so much for coming, and we are going to end now.